Week 9 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few wide receivers I have as sleepers this week. The first guy, Bryan Edwards of the Vegas Raiders. So right here we know Henry Ruggs and all the issues that happen off the field. And the Raiders immediately cut him. And his fantasy and his football career is probably over here at the 23-year-old Ruggs. So now it's the next man up over there in Vegas. And Bryan Edwards, he's been added in 14% of fantasy leagues here, but he's still available in a whopping 76% of leagues. So right here, him and Hunter Renfrow are going to be the number 1 and 2 options right now, in my opinion, on this Vegas Raider offense. In the last few games before the bye week here for Edwards, week 6 at Denver, 2 catches, 67 yards, and week 7 versus the Philadelphia Eagles, 3 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown. But this week, he's got a good matchup here in week 9 at the New York Giants that give up the 11th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And we know Derek Carr in this offense, they like throwing the ball, they like chucking it down the field, and now they need a little bit more of a new deep threat here is Vegas, where Ruggs obviously finished over there in Raiders land. So right here, I think Bryan Edwards could be a good option this week. Like I mentioned, he's available in a bunch of fantasy leagues, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him reach double-digit fantasy points this week as the Raiders' new number 2 option in the offense. The next wide receiver I like as a sleeper this week's Taj Sharp, who I mentioned as a waiver wire pickup this week, are the Atlanta Falcons. So Russell Gage, he had a goose egg. Okay, we know Calvin Ridley, he's going to be out for a while, taking care of personal issues, and he's probably out for the season, in my opinion. I don't think the Falcons are going to rush him back here when they're pretty much out of the hunt here. But anyway, Taj Sharp last week operating as a top receiver over here in Atlanta, had 5 catches, 58 yards versus the Carolina Panthers, and he's got a good matchup on paper at week 9 at New Orleans that gives up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And this is a ball game, in my opinion, where the Falcons, they're going to be trailing early and often, and Matt Ryan's going to just have to air it out. So Sharp, he's available in 97% of leagues. I think he could have another decent PPR day where maybe 40 or 50 total yards and possibly find the end zone. And he's definitely a sleeper option this week, in my opinion. And the third and final wide receiver I have as a sleeper option this week. A wide receiver I have as a sleeper this week's Donovan Peoples-Jones of the Cleveland Browns. So right here, Odell Beckham, he got released in the late hours of Thursday night here. So now Peoples-Jones will either be the number 2 or 3 receiver on this Cleveland Brown team. So Beckham, he's out of town. We'll see where he ends up. But we've seen flashes from Jones this season with a few good ball games here. Week 5 at the Los Angeles Chargers, 5 catches, 70 yards. Week 6 versus the Arizona Cardinals, the best game of his NFL career, 4 catches, 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the last 2 weeks here, Peoples-Jones has been out of action with a groin injury, but he returned to practice this week. And right now, he's available in a whopping 93% of fantasy leagues. But with no more Odell Beckham over there, and with Jarvis Landry back up, if he could get on the field, he's definitely a good playmaker, in my opinion, is Peoples-Jones. And he's got a good matchup as well at the Cincinnati Bengals that give up the 10th most fantasy points to wide receivers. So that's a few wide receiver sleepers I have here in week 9 of the fantasy football season.